The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I'm joined this week by two very cool co-hosts.
Lauren Ash.
And Shane Kelly.
And this week we don't really have a game to talk about this week. A bunch of things.
Oh, I do.
Well, okay, kind of do. We have some things to talk about, but we don't really have so much have a game in our traditional format. So we thought we would just, since we were going to get together and chit-chat anyway, we're friends, we'd like to get on a call and talk and things. We thought we'd make this an all what's making us happy this week episode, which is our excuse for, patented name for just a grab bag of topics. We got a few things that we thought we might talk about this week.
I think a few other people might own that patent, so maybe
that's true. We
patented by someone else. What's making us happy this week.
Blatantly ripped that off from Pop Culture Happy Hour with apologies to that much more famous and well-known podcast. Thank you, Pop Culture Happy Hour. Eventually, I don't even listen to Pop Culture Happy Hour anymore, and so I forget that we ripped them off. And so I'm like, oh yes, our patented segment that we invented. We did not rip off that at all.
Mm-mm.
The thing I love that they've been doing lately, and I just have to throw this out there, is that they seem like they're doing their podcast a lot shorter and a lot more focused on one specific movie or whatever. So they're not even doing what's making us happy.
They are. They do it on Fridays.
They do it on Fridays.
They do it once a week.
We do it every episode, so we're doing it at least as much as they are. I feel
every episode we don't talk for more than an hour and a half on.
Yes, yeah. That is, if listeners, if you haven't picked up on it, that's our scheme, is that we do what's making us happy if we get to the end of the episode and we're not all dying exhausted. But this week, since we're waiting till next week to talk about the next game on our list, which is Dodgeball Academia, which I'm playing and really enjoying, but we aren't far enough to discuss yet. Just life is complicated this week. Boy, is it ever. But we just thought we'd talk about a few different little topics. And so the first thing that Shane suggested we talk about was he bought a new widget.
I did, and it was kind of a surprise that it arrived months ago. At least 2-3 months ago, I spotted a deal on the Amazon refurb store for an Oculus Quest 2. And I've always been really fascinated with VR, but I already own one VR headset, which was the PSVR, and I don't even really have my PlayStation set up to use it anymore. So I wanted something to try out, and I want to see what the new hardware was all about. And the new hardware is really good. And, despite what, the unpopularity of Facebook as a company right now, I really wanted to try
Meta.
I don't mean, I guess I do. Yeah, okay. So I'm not this isn't a review of the metaverse. This is a review of the Oculus Quest 2 and my experience with it. So like I said, I bought one refurbished, so I got a good deal on it. And then Amazon was like, get lost. Well, it'll be there when it's there. And so it sat in my order history for 2-3 months, listed as delivery time will be updated soon. We'll let you know. And, I called them and they didn't know. Anyway, out of the blue, no warning, on my porch a couple of days ago, is this Oculus Quest 2. And the hardware for this thing is so much of an upgrade from the PSVR that it's not even close. The headset is lightweight, it's lightweight comparatively. The controllers are so much better than what you would use with the PlayStation VR. The PlayStation VR reused the light up wand controllers that were created for the eye.
God,
toy.
what a nightmare those things
And
were.
they're they were junk. The ones I had used like a USB-B, like the weird pyramid USB to charge. And
credit where it's due, like it was like it was like not a very good solution, but the PlayStation VR came out pretty early, like days for VR. Like it's been out for years now. It was out at a time when like it was launched at like $500 or something at a time when like comparable setups from like straight VR things were like double that price. And a big part of that was, rather than invent brand new controllers with fancy tech in them, they repurposed their PlayStation 3 Move controllers, which hampered the system like really badly for the entire time that PlayStation VR was a thing, because you didn't have a joystick, and you literally and they weren't very good at sensing motion. They sucked. They really sucked.
Yeah. Occasionally the funniest thing would be your hand would just rocket off of your virtual wrist and like shoot across the room.
No.
And it was so bizarre. And the other thing that would be so annoying with that is properly leveling the floor was sometimes a problem. Like you had to like dial it in a particular setting, and it would really start to wander around. Like suddenly you're getting shorter and the floor is coming up. It's hard to say which. So all of that pretty much has been solved on this headset, which the setup experience for it is pretty cool, actually. So what you do is when you put it on, you see through the cameras a really crappy black and white version of the world around you. And then you reach down and put a controller on the ground, and that's how it identifies where the ground is.
Okay.
And then the controller lets you basically paint a safe area called the Guardian boundary. Right.
It's like what you do with a Roomba.
Do you do that? Well, this is very visceral. You're like literally drawing a circle on the ground, and you are a Roomba in that you won't bump into things, because when you start walking outside that circle, no matter what software you're in, it will fade you back to seeing through the camera. So that is a huge improvement, and like I said, controllers are 1,000 times better. It even has the ability to like do some hand tracking, because the smart thing here, and I haven't really used one of these self-contained VR gadgets before. The PSVR, remember, it has a camera that you have to sit in front of, and you have to face that camera. That's fairly limiting, so you can't like stand up and walk around. It really was a seated experience primarily.
Yeah, or standing in a very particular spot, and make sure you don't like get too close so that your head goes out of frame for the camera. It was bad.
Yeah, that was kind of that was particularly annoying. Like you would stand up, and now you're,
and then it would lose track of where your head was, and you'd sort of feel that your head is floating away.
Bizarre. Yeah, it's a lot better about that, because it's got 4 cameras, I think, now on the front of the visor. And so it's using that to track. Very occasionally, I have had it lose track of where the hand controller was, but only when I was like looking like off in one direction and reaching behind me, which is not terribly relevant in a lot of game experiences. So, and even then it certainly wasn't like rocketing off of my body and flying away like it did sometimes in PSVR.
Like you're some sort of Gundam or something, doing a rocket punch.
Absolutely. So I got that set up, and I got started, and it's also really, I think, worth mentioning how nice it is not to have a wire to something at all, like having it all be wireless. Now, I was really interested in this thing because I have this gaming PC, right? So I want to try out in particular, I want to try out Half-Life Alyx. That's the thing I really want to play, right? I have not gotten to play Half-Life Alyx yet. That's stretching it for the size of the game I'll play for this podcast anyway. Trying to fit that in is going to be a little tough. But so I wanted to start off trying out some of the stuff that you could install directly on the headset. And just like last week or so, I think they released Ultra Wings 2, which is the sequel to my very favorite VR experience from the PSVR. And so, of course, I've been trying that. Before I get into Ultra Wings 2, I want to talk about one last thing about the headset, which is I am a glasses wearer.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer big, chonky, dorky glasses. If you're buying one of these Oculus headsets, don't do what I did. Consider the size of your glasses frames. I don't have my glasses here with me. I switched.
Yeah,
to
I just noticed. I
today.
just realized you're wearing.
I assumed you wore
lenses,
contacts so you
which-
could play Oculus,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. So I'm wearing contacts today because I'm playing with the Oculus. The Oculus has a face guard, right, that is removable and swappable. And if you wear glasses, they have an insert that adds additional space between the lenses and your glasses. That's good. You don't want your glasses grinding against the lenses. They'll both get scratched. Probably the Oculus first. Anyway, so my problem wasn't really the space there. My problem turned out to be the width of the glasses. And for the only way for me to put the headset on with the glasses, Spacer made it fine front to back. I would have to take my glasses off, put them inside the headset, and then put both of them on together.
Oh, no.
And yeah, it's kind of awkward. VR, it makes it just that much more annoying and like literally in order to fit them in there, I would have to kind of bend the arms a little bit. I would have to close the arms of the glasses and then kind of slide the glasses in at an angle, then pop them open and put the whole thing on my head. Kind of annoying. Wish I had thought about that. I'm now in for, I think, like another $70 on a set of removable like prescription lenses for this thing.
Yeah.
Or I could just get used to doing the contacts when I want to use it, but I don't know. We'll see how much of an annoyance that is. It might actually be cheaper for me to just do the contacts when I feel like playing VR. But
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask a little bit about the weight because I've had a really odd my exposure to VR is very scattershot. I've played your PlayStation VR at your house. The brief time we were together in person, we decided to spend it with me looking elsewhere with
Right.
the VR headset on my head.
There was some fun stuff in there.
There was some fun stuff. But I've also did some work with the Surface, which is incredibly heavy. And that was quite a long time ago, but the Surface was undeniably heavy, and I got headaches after 10 minutes of wearing it. So I'm curious how, for like a longer experience, how much lighter is it? Lighter than the PlayStation VR, or is it somewhere in between? Because it's got more tech built in, so not sure where it falls on the. Another issue I was having is like where the weight was distributed. It was like towards the back of the head or the front. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it feels like.
That's
to wear
to me.
it.
That's the thing that matters a lot. Is the distribution of the weight. Like adding 2 pounds to the weight of my already very weighty head is not necessarily going to tire me out that fast.
Mm-hmm.
But if that weight is hanging awkwardly, then it really does. I don't know the weight exactly. I could look up the numbers. I definitely think this thing is lighter than the PSVR. Or
I
at
don't
least
mind about
very
actual weight. I
close.
just want to know if it feels lighter because the distribution is better.
Yeah, the distribution isn't perfect. They separately, I don't think this is, maybe this was probably a cost-saving move. There's multiple strap options for the Oculus 2, whatever it is, Quest 2. The one it comes with is really functionally decent and lightweight. You know, it's like an elastic band that you can kind of cinch at the back, and it has like a Velcro strap that goes across the top of your head, and it's quick to take off. It's quick to put on and take off which, you know, is really nice. But it does have all the weight at the front, and it's kind of has to be tight in order for it to be form-fitting to your head, right? Because of the elastic. And they also have a Pro strap, which if I were wearing this thing all day, I would want. I'm never likely to spend that long in VR anyway. But the Pro strap is a lot like the one for the PSVR, which I think is really good fit on the PSVR. PSVR had a adjustable hard-sided strap where you would adjust the diameter of it essentially with a little knob. And that fit a lot like a baseball cap, you know, and it was adjustable to tighten it down so that the weight was spread around your whole head rather than being kind of hung from the front of your face. Now, listeners won't know this because, of course, this is an audio medium, but Raygan and I have a really convenient shelf
Yes,
built into our skull.
A little bit of a Precambrian.
You know, we're high foreheaded. We have a regal high forehead, but we also have a very prominent brow line, which forms a very useful sunshade, throwing our eyes into shade, you know, in the heat of the day.
We're well suited to standing in the rain. Never gets in our eyes.
Absolutely.
Runs straight off the front.
Absolutely. It's perfect, a perfect gutter system. And, you know, the new benefit, I'm always finding new benefits to having just a titanic dome, is that the VR headset hangs nicely off of my brow line. Now, over time, it does leave a very solid red mark right across my prominent brow line. But I think that only accentuates
your crown, Shane. No.
So what I'm saying is every time you're playing this on your lunch break, you're coming back and you have just like a giant mark of shame across your forehead.
It is worth considering. You don't want to just like rip this thing off and then immediately.
Maybe not before like a wedding or a graduation photo or an important
Zoom directly
interview.
into an interview or whatever. No, that's very funny, Shane.
Yeah, if you're having your wedding in VR, I think this is something you should consider for the photos. You know, people are going to come out with a real, like the Oculus logo is kind of a little pill-shaped circle, right? That is going to be emblazoned across your face by the donut of the padding on this thing when you take it off after your 4-hour play session. So watch out for that.
I am very excited to check this thing out with you. I don't think I'm completely sold on the idea of owning a new headset. It's one of those things that's like I'm interested in, but like I'm probably going to need to check it out in person with you before I decide whether I want to plunk down $300-ish on one. Sure. But I am interested to hear what you've been playing on it, because it's definitely like there's this whole other scene, this whole it's like, you know, I'm pretty clued into like what's happening on Steam and on most of the big consoles in terms of the kinds of games that we would potentially cover on this show. But there's still a whole, it may be small, but there's still a whole like scene of games for VR that I never even see. And I don't really see them discussed either, because I'm not like listening to VR podcasts or watching VR YouTubers or whatever. So what were you excited to play on this thing?
Like I said, like I mainly bought this thing as a Half-Life vehicle, and just because I wanted to just make now that that's available, I am going to be exploring that. But what I found as I kind of booted it up for the first time, I was like, oh, okay, you know, I'll download some games. I found out, like I said, Ultra Wings 2 has just come out, right? Ultra Wings 1 is the thing that I was kind of hanging on to the PSVR for. It's a lot of fun. So what this is, Ultra Wings is a simplified flight sim, right? And the way it plays out, I don't know if you ever played Pilot Wings on the SNES, right? I did have a little bit of exploration of that a long time ago. It's a sim where you get a few different planes and you can fly them from island to island in a little island chain. But the cockpit experience is just, I think, especially on the PSVR, that was something that works really well. But in VR in general, like if you can sit in one place and do something cool in real life, that will translate pretty well. Ultra Wings brings like a like interconnected series of islands and a bunch of little jobs you can do, right? And
Wind Waker style.
Yeah, well, sort of. If in Wind Waker, you were just like landing at a series of airstrips, sure.
Yeah,
Kind of
I
are,
just was
I
excited
guess.
about islands, but yes.
Yeah, well, it would be a lot cooler if you could get out and walk around the islands. But from the air, the islands are pretty sweet. And every time you get a new airport that you can take off from, you get another little ready room that you can explore on foot, which is kind of cool. They've added a lot of everything that I liked to Ultra Wings 2. One of the most fun things in Ultra Wings 1 were some of the missions where you would be like you'd take off your little airplane and or ultralight and you have a pistol in one hand and you go fly around and shoot balloons, right? Super fun. The sense of like motion in the jet where you can like do flips and loop-de-loops and stuff, it's very convincing and realistic and fun. The graphics looks like something out of the N64. It's real cartoony, but I actually really like that. You know, it's very relaxing to fly around over these like little cartoon cathedrals and red roofed islands full of beautiful little buildings. And when you, I want long term, I would like to try out something like Microsoft Flight Sim. And I think I can do that in VR. I'd like to really give that a try. But the controls in Ultra Wings are really simple. You get like a little one stick, and you've got your thrust and your flaps and your little startup sequence with like 2 or 3 switches. But they're like cartoon versions of a ultralight, a fighter jet, a helicopter, and a biplane, right? There's a pretty good selection, and you can check out these different islands. And I just find it so chill and relaxing to go island hopping. Right now, I kind of did all the missions to get through the ultralight because the ultralight is super slow, but it's also, I mean, it's in the name, is really light. The second plane you unlock is the fighter jet. Sorry, no, it's not a jet. It's a propeller plane. It's like an old fashioned warplane, right? It's like I don't know what to compare it to. It's a small single seater propeller plane.
Okay.
And that's really fun for the takeoff and landing, but it's a lot heavier than that ultralight. So you can get to the other islands really quick. I'm impatient. I want to get there fast. I have been crashing it every time I try to land it. Just before this call, so I probably put maybe a couple of hours into the game at this point. I'm about like 5% complete on it. But the challenge for me right now is landing the old-fashioned warplane. The thing that they have improved on over the last game, I get aesthetically the desire to not have this to have this be a chill flying sim and not something where you are engaged in dogfights, right?
Okay.
Now, the first one had a very, very minimal use of like dogfights. The second one has like a like you don't have to engage with the dogfighting. It's in like a separate ops menu for like jobs. And if you're just doing free flying, you're not flying through a war zone. But if you want to, you can do some of these war ops where there's like drones flying around for you to shoot, or other planes to dogfight with. And that rules. That's super fun in this little dogfighter, right? And I'm just having a lot of fun with that. I haven't, like I said, barely scratched the surface, but it's a great direct comparison for me moving up from the PSVR. What I'm really excited to try out next just came out today, and that is a sailing simulator. I did some sailing as a very young kid, and I would really like to get out in a little sailing ship and see if I can brush up any of those skills in a simulator. I'll let you know how that goes.
That sounds actually like a really good use of VR. I could totally see that, like a little tiny, like sail a little dinghy around or something.
Well,
Sounds
I've
super
downloaded
fun.
it and I haven't launched it because I was too busy crashing the
plane, right?
Little airplane every.
What's the sailing game called?
The sailing game is called Marineverse Cup. And yeah, it seems like a pretty good use of VR. I should say that some of the game, the games are not cheap but not expensive. Marineverse Cup is something like $25. So hopefully it's good. It's got like a 4.7 rating so far. But these are a lot of people that seem like they were in some kind of pre-release update. And I think it looks like you can buy stuff in there, like buy some DLC in there.
You gotta buy wind coins in order to.
I don't know. No, I don't think it's like that. Like honestly, like once you're like $250 in on the Quest 2, like buying a $20 airplane game is no big deal.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I just want to try VR again until I can do the Room VR. It's so cruel that there is a Room game that is only for VR that I may never play.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah. No,
very
frustrating
there is.
for
I'm looking
me.
forward to trying that. I really like the puzzly experiences in VR, and I also really like the weird multiplayer experiences. Like there's one that in a free game that I played called Double Mirror or something like that. What is it? I'll remember it in a minute. I'm gonna look it up. This was a little free collection of VR experiences that you could download and play, and one of them was a hide and seek where they put people in a lobby of like maybe 5 people. 2 of them grow to be giants, and the rest shrink to be the size of mice. And it is a hide and seek game where the giants are trying to find the little guys, and the movement is very weird. The giants kind of just slide around, but the little guys throw themselves with like a catapult, so they go pew, and then the giants are like throwing big black hole orbs at you. Very, very strange, very cool. Out of the little collection, that was the standout. So I've been messing around with it, but like I said, the only thing I've really engaged with so far that much has been Ultra Wings.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. Let us know if you come across anything that you think would be good for the short game, because maybe I'll make some time to come over to your place and check it out on your VR setup. I do think it's tricky for us to cover a platform like Oculus or VR in general, since I don't think a majority of our listeners would have access to it, and certainly a majority of our hosts don't. But listeners, if you have a VR game that you think is short game material, let us know. You never know. Maybe we'll talk about it as a short segment, or maybe do an extra episode on it or something. We'll see.
I think I can rent them at the Paley Center downtown.
Oh, neat! That's actually a really good idea. Things like VR. I remember renting. I never did, but you used to be able to rent a console from Blockbuster or whatever, and it seems like we're in the stage where that would still be pretty relevant for VR.
I think you have to play it there, but that would be just fine for a short game.
Yeah,
well, I'll find out.
Yeah,
if we had it, there's a game I would love to try multiplayer that's called Demio, and that one is a came out last year. It's kind of a multiplayer card-based dungeon crawler, where it's looks like a little fancy D&D table in the middle of a group of the players, and you're controlling your character by playing cards, is what it seems like to me. So I'm still kind of looking into that, but it looks like a lot of fun. That's the kind of if you make something that looks like standing around a fancy Dungeons and Dragons table, I'm gonna want to try it. So yeah,
Looks cool.
So, thanks partially to some of our wonderful listeners and our Patreons particularly, I have recently gotten an Xbox. Woo-hoo! I haven't had one since the 360. So, honestly, this is a bit of a time warp for me to like see a lot of things that I'm quite familiar with, but I skipped 2 generations at least.
Just one, I think. So it was just the 360.
One.
You skipped the Xbox One and its
various spin-offs.
Yeah, but they were all just sort of like, different versions of the same console. And then you have the Xbox One S, not the One X now, right?
Yes, Series X.
Yeah.
S.
Oh, Series. See, even I'm messing it. We had endless conversations about this, and even I'm still messing up the naming scheme. Xbox, what have you done to yourself and us?
Well, it was fun for a while because you could call it the Xbone, and now that you can't. Now it's the Xbox Sys. Just like a plural of Xboxes. No, I only have one.
XSS? I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. I really do think it's part of Microsoft's strategy right now, though. They seem to be wanting to make Xbox more of a platform than a piece of hardware. And so they're spreading things out. And they had the whole Game Pass thing.
Well, that's honestly really the biggest selling point for me, because I essentially had purchased Game Pass to try to see if I could make it work in parallels. Didn't really work. But there was a 3 months for $1 or something absurd, like 3 months for $10 or something absurd like that. So I already had Game Pass before I decided to buy an Xbox, and I turned it on and immediately downloaded probably $300 worth of games, filled the whole hard drive up, like immediately went a little crazy. Actually, more than 300. It would probably be more like $600 worth of games. I don't know. It was all free. I just hit buttons. It was like being on one of those TV shows as a kid where you could just like shop in the toy store by throwing stuff in your basket. Like that's how I behaved on the Game Pass. I was
supermarket sweep.
Yeah, I supermarket sweeped the Game Pass.
The month I signed up for Game Pass is the only month I've ever hit my Comcast data cap for my home internet.
Oh no. Oh,
I don't think I have a data cap, but if I did, it would have been.
You'll find out
for sure. Thanks, Fios. But I mean, it just was like I set up an absurd queue, and then like a day later I opened it. It was like, you've managed to fill 80% of this hard drive. Good job. And that's not even without downloading most of the big games. I think I downloaded all of the ones that I missed. Of course, what did I do with all of this beauty and splendor in games I hadn't played? I played Hades for a while.
Of course, like you do.
Just like you do. Could not resist. But honestly, it's been really fun because I'm not using it for watching TV or media. I have a Roku stick that I like for that. I'm playing it exclusively on my projector, so everything is beautiful and big, often with my headphones plugged into my controller, so I can be not divorced, quite frankly.
Best thing that Xbox ever did was, and yeah, PlayStation of course has that too, but being able to plug headphones into your controller is like, it's really nice. It's really nice.
It's an absurdly good, because when I'm normally on the projector and want to use headphones, I have to stream the audio through my phone, which is just an extra level of randomly disconnects, and suddenly a line of Bridgerton will come through at full blast in the middle of the night. So that isn't something that's ideal. Never had that problem with Xbox. A corded thing in the controller, just perfect. And honestly, a thing I'm very happy about is there are so many games I couldn't play in the last year because they were PC exclusives. Tons of those are on Xbox Game Pass. So without incurring additional cost, I can play Death's Door, Forgotten City. I
Forgotten
can
City.
just go back and
such
play
a good
ton.
game.
Yeah. So if I'm slow on my future games, it's probably because I'm playing a game that we covered 6 months to a year ago. But I'm incredibly excited. And so far, there's no, like, it is exactly what I want from a console, which is it is completely getting out of the way of the games. I basically go download my free game and go play it. So this is not paid for by Xbox in any way, but
Xbox, if you want to pay us,
honestly,
or hey,
it's
you know what?
like
Facebook,
Apple Arcade.
if you want to pay us, I
Yeah.
guess that's fine too. We'll take the money.
I mean, like Apple Arcade, once you have paid the ecosystem, it's very easy to sample. It's like a library where I can go read a chapter, decide if I want to play the game, bounce off, and there's no downside. I can take a lot more risks. This isn't to say that we're going to only cover these games, obviously. We like too many games to do that, but it does take some barrier down, especially if someone suggests something that's older. I can just dip in. I've already found some that I very strongly disliked. And other ones I enjoyed. That's why we're doing Dodgeball Academia, because I was able to play a day's worth, say, no, this is worth playing. Let's do it. It's rare that we have time or inclination to do quite as much sampling, but you know, everyone has those ADD nights where it's going to be more fun to play 5 or 6 games for 15 minutes than one continuously. And I happened to have them the other night, and we've got several games now in our queue because of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was excited for you and Nate to get Xboxes for the show because because none of us had Xboxes previously. I play on PC primarily, and so it gives me access to most of those games. But like Game Pass, like
it's a great deal.
It is. It's hard to argue with it. Like there's definitely things about it that like give me pause from like a industry and like health of the business kind of vibe.
Which is why I'm saying this is not a Game Pass podcast.
Yeah,
Don't worry,
exactly.
folks.
Yeah, don't worry. We're not covering Switch stuff. We're not gonna stop covering stuff on itch. But it does like the fact that they've set up this service in such a way that like it is so consumer friendly. It is so hard to argue with it as a value. It is such a good deal and a really enjoyable way to try and play games. It's a huge competitive advantage. And then, of course, they're buying all these massive studios and their whole catalogs, like the entire Bethesda catalog, just suddenly pop up on Game Pass ready for people to play. It just becomes this incredible driver for success for Microsoft in the game space. And like they are winning, folks. Like the PlayStation 5, I'm sure, is great. I don't have one because you can't get them, but like you can get Xbox. You don't even have to have an Xbox. You can get Xbox. You can play it on your PC. You can play it on your phone in many cases. Like they really have a pretty fascinating strategy for like what their next, decade of games business is going to be like. And I think it's a hard strategy to argue with. And, it gives me some concern. Like if you're a AAA company and you're making games, your choices are pretty open. You can decide like, well, I'll put it out on Xbox and put it out on PlayStation, put it out on PC, whatever. But if you're like a smaller developer, the kind of developer that we like to follow for this show, is Game Pass going to ultimately eat their lunch? Like, are we going to end up in a situation where if your smaller game isn't on Game Pass, it can't find an audience?
Well, I did a little bit of industry research at Game Club on subscriptions, and people who subscribe to Xbox Game Pass spend more money on other games than people who don't. Like, it's just an indicator of you like games. It doesn't generally, like, you still buy games. Like,
That's
people who buy games buy games. people who go to libraries still buy books. Like it's the same thing, right? It does not reduce game consumption and game buying.
That's really interesting. And
unless you
honestly,
are,
like, really
it depends on your
heartening to
person.
hear.
Like there are people
Yeah.
who just want to play like a Fortnite. Like, but if you're not the type of people who are like, if you buy a game a year, Game Pass is going to eat that lunch. If you are the type of person who is buying an indie game, you're probably not buying one game a year.
I have a theory about that, and it's basically just that there is now, once a gamer has enough like cash to have a phone, which is like 99% of people, there's a level of investment in like what you want to play for absolutely any person's budget, right? You know, there's free games that you can play for free all the time. You can play Fortnite on your phone all the time as long as you want, right? You don't have to pay money.
Depends on your phone, but yes.
Yeah.
Right. But, you know, once you hit that barrier, there's like so many different price points that there's an infinite number of different possible budgets for people to want to spend it really is their time that they want to invest, right? And there's such a sliding scale of like people's willingness to pay for games, both in terms of money and time, that like every person will have their sweet spot there.
It's more like 2 game subscriptions might be too much for people. Like
Yeah.
but
I wonder.
it might be, but I think
I'm
it's
about
more
to cancel PlayStation Plus. I'll say that. Like I had a year-based subscription of PlayStation Plus, and I haven't booted up my PlayStation in a while, and so I'm turning that off.
It's the PlayStation Pluses that would lose out rather than like a small game that's never going to come on Game Pass. Or, you know, I think that's it is definitely going to fight PlayStation Plus for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, PlayStation is like, I mean, there's already rumors, of course, that they're like trying to come up with a model to match what Xbox is doing. But I don't see how they can. I mean, you know, this is the horse race of console wars isn't like my forte.
I'm not interested in it, frankly.
Yeah, I'm
but
not that interested in it either. But it is interesting to see like this shift in the market and to see like, well, what does PlayStation do to compete with this? Like, they can't buy half the industry the way that Microsoft is doing. Like they just. It's almost impossible. You know, I think they've in the past had good success by doing things like reaching out more to indies. That's how they propped up the Vita for 90% of its lifetime. Was they did a lot of outreach to indies and did a lot of effort to bring those people onto their platform. And maybe an approach they could take there would be to Microsoft can spend. What was it, like $70 billion or something like that?
Money. But you know, a thing I will give it credit for is I said a sentence that I've never said before, which was, "Should I play No Man's Sky? I'll just download it. Why not?" Like now I just have it there. Like if I feel like it, I can just play it. Like it's that kind of. It is for me the opposite of a paralysis of choice. It is very much a. I'm going to go here, see how I feel, pick something. I still am playing the Switch. Like it hasn't replaced it, but that's just because it's different types of games are there. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to not play a Zelda game. Like Switch is never going to go away. And there's going to be other experiences that I think are better on a portable system. But it is very nice to have games that have that large barrier to entry that are console, like that are like on the expensive side, quite frankly, that I wouldn't have purchased and can now try. For example, Psychonauts 2.
Oh, have you tried that yet?
I haven't tried it yet, but that is probably the next, like after I finish Dodgeball Academia, and probably it'll be Far Changing Tides will be out, and that's another 10 hours. Like after I finish the show games, I think that's probably going to be my next longer.
After we finish games for the show, and then we're all like sitting around skeletons, like, well, someday we'll finish the games for the show.
I mean, again, I'm I am playing Dr. Academia and Hades right now, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't.
Oh yeah, no, I'm always playing 2 to 3 games that are in the background that are not show related, but yeah, it can be tough sometimes. Those things take a while for you to get to. Or
It's
get
mostly
through.
that I don't want to be playing a platformer at the same time as another like hand coordination game. Like I want my hands to take a break, and doing Dodgeball Academia and Hades and then a platformer just sounds like I'm going to get just my fingers will fall off.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need a Firewatch in there. Like I got to counter program or my hands will be tired. That's that is kind of my calculus. If anyone's curious, like how Laura picks different games, I literally want to change the way my hands play games because I type all damn day on the computer and they get tired. And
like you got to
sad.
take good care of your hands as a lover of games and as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners, this is the Dad's Corner. Shane's about to give us some very dadly advice. Shane, go right ahead. Tell us how to take care of our hands.
Don't get them caught in heavy machinery.
There you go.
Beautiful.
Advice from the dad.
I don't know why you thought I was about to give sage advice. I have no advice about how to take
It just sounded like a really dadly thing the way you were putting it.
Oh, I actually, I am not a dad, but I do have some advice if you are a gamer with your hands wearing out. If you search hand exercises for knitters, that is actually what you want. If your hands get cramped after playing a platformer, because knitters are constantly clenching their fingers to hold the needles, and their hands will get tired and they aren't able to continue. So there are a number of exercises that knitters have developed so they can continue knitting all day long. And that is what you need if your hands are cramping up because you've been trying to beat Celeste. Please just do yourself a favor. I guess this is the end of the Xbox segment is called Google hand exercises for knitters. And thank you. And just thank me later.
Thank you now, Laura.
I also recommend the Astro Jacks for this use case.
We still owe the listeners some video of Shane Astrojacking. I swear it's going to happen the next time I can.
Don't call it
Transfer that into a
The next time I can unobtrusively sneak a camera to where he's jacking his Astros, I will record it for the listeners.
This is getting worse.
Yeah, much worse.
Play that transition music. We are done.
Well, those were the 2 topics that we had that were at least more game specific or game related. But since this is a grab bag, we thought it would be a good time for us to do more what's making us happy. So we're not transitioning into a new segment. This whole thing was what's making us happy. Laura was happy about her Xbox, for example, but we're all happy about more than just games, and so I thought we'd round this out with some of our more traditional what's making us happy stuff. So because you guys have both talked, I guess I'll go first. Okay. We were talking before the episode, and I was talking about how I had planned to do a What's Making Us Happy on the Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth episode. And because it was an anime game, I was going to show my weeb ass and talk about the anime that I've been watching lately and recommend some anime. But I know that I'm in a judgment-free zone here, right?
Never.
I know that you guys would never, especially not Shane, would never ever make fun of me for watching anime.
Shane will make fun of you until you recommend something he likes.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with recommending something that I know he likes then, just to throw him off his game. So I don't watch a absolute ton of anime, but this season has been pretty good in that there are 2 shows currently airing this season that I like. And that's actually pretty uncommon. Like I keep my ear to the ground about anime, but I don't watch everything that's coming out. To kind of give you a sense of my tastes, like I tend to like the stuff that tends towards the more like artsy side of things. I don't really like the big shonen shows, like, no offense to the folks who like the like Demon Slayer or One Piece or whatever. Like those are all fine. I've watched Demon Slayer. I thought it was okay. I've watched a fair amount of One Piece. I've never really watched the DBZs in the world. I've watched a little of the Narutos, etc. But like none of that really grabs me. That's not really what I'm into anime for. Mostly I like anime for the sort of more like smaller stories, beautiful art. I like a lot of the sort of shoujo anime. I like things with like romance. I like things with fantasy, that sort of stuff. So it's actually pretty rare for me to find two shows in a single season that I'm actually into. And this season I kind of lucked out. There's two shows that I definitely want to recommend, but for folks with potentially different tastes. So one of them requires more caveats than the other. The one that I can easily recommend to practically anyone is Ranking of Kings. Shane, I know you are with me on this because we've both been watching Ranking of Kings, and I've been recommending it to everybody. Everybody that will listen to me talk about anime has heard me talk about Ranking.
This is the one thing is I really have to claim my credit here, because this is the one anime that I found out about and recommended to you, and then we both liked it. So,
yeah, wild. How did that happen? You saw it on TikTok or something, right?
I did. I saw some people talking about it on TikTok.
Yeah. I tend to like wait pretty deep into anime seasons before picking up new shows, because it takes a while to know like which ones are going to turn out to be really bad or problematic.
The thing I want to tell people who are curious about it is the animation is really incredible. Like the story is good, but the animation is incredible. And you should look up the thing from episode 1 where Boji fights a bunch of snakes, right?
Incredible.
Yeah, and you should know, like, this is the same bunch of animators that did the first couple of seasons of Attack on Titan.
Yes,
and those were the seasons I watched, so yeah. I liked that show.
Yeah, they're just turning out incredible work here. It's so beautiful. The art style is very unusual for current anime. It has this look that looks a lot like it has these very bold character designs with very unique silhouettes that veer a little more towards like Western animation. Western animation.
It looked like Over the Garden Wall a little.
Great example.
Totally agree.
Although I think if you compare it side by side with like early anime that was more Western inspired, like back in the like Astro Boy kind of days, when they would take more, they'd have these more exaggerated characters. Well, we've got a doctor character. Well, of course he's going to wear, he's going to be big and round and fat and wear glasses and have a huge nose the size of his arms, that kind of stuff.
This is the kind of anime where, like, if there were a character that had the exact design of like Popeye and Olive Oil, you'd be like, huh, oh, yet another weird looking set of people, but they would fit right in.
I was listening to another podcast. Shout outs to the Anime Sickos podcast, which is a good podcast if you like comedians talking mostly not about anime, mostly about what they call the 3 pillars of modern misery. The 4 pillars of modern misery: anime, gaming, posting, and jobs. And it's just a good podcast about complaining. It's a great show if you want a show like that. But I was going to shout them out because they don't usually talk that much about anime, despite the fact that Anime Sickos is the title of their podcast. But they did an episode where they talked about Ranking of Kings. And they just said it's a good show about a guy who goes around. A little guy who goes around. And I'm like, yeah, this is just a show about a little guy who goes around. Boji is like a really good little guy, and he sure does go around.
He's got heart.
He's got heart, man.
He is also a really little guy.
I'm like, Avatar is also about a little guy who goes around. Love it.
Perfect. I love shows about a little guy who goes around. It's a show. I'd also recommend it for people who are fans of things like Steven Universe. I think it has a bit of a through line there, in that it's a show about a little guy who goes around who's full of heart. It's
this whole genre. I love it.
It's a whole genre. The setup is that it's this fantasy world that is very lightly. One of the things I like about it is that it does not lore dump at you. It introduces lore at times when it makes sense to introduce it for character reasons, which is it deploys its lore very sparingly over the course of its length in a way that I think is very clever. But what it sets
and apart
up
from that, it very much plays off of fairy tale kingdom style
right
world.
Right,
We're all
fairy tale world. fantasy world that on the face of it looks very familiar. Boji is this tiny little guy who's the prince. He wears a tiny little crown. He's so cute, and but he is the
funny little
prince.
froggy mouth.
Yeah, he's just this adorable little round bodied dude. And he's the prince of this kingdom, led by a really, really big guy, his father, the king, King Boss or King Bosu. And King Boss, depending on the translation you're looking at, is just this massive king, and his tiny little son.
He's a giant. He's the size of a building.
Yes, he's the size of a building. His son is deaf, and a weakling, powerless guy, and so everyone thinks he's an idiot and a failure. And his younger brother is presumed to
Prince Daida.
Yeah, Prince Daida is the sort of, even though he's the younger prince, everyone assumes he's going to inherit the throne because he's not a deaf little weakling pudgy guy. And I almost don't want to say anything more about the show because it is full of just it's a big adventure story. Every single episode, it introduces a new weird guy. Not necessarily guy. There's lots of women characters.
More guys that go around.
Actually. Lots more guys that go around. All the guys.
Some of them
go
aren't
around.
little guys that go around. You got the core little guy that goes around. But.
Yeah. He is the littlest of the guys. But
you haven't mentioned his best friend though.
Oh yeah, Kage. Who is a literal sort of shadow on the ground. It introduces him pretty early, and he is he's like a smart talking guy from the Shadow Clan. And in keeping with the incredibly wild character designs in this show, the Shadow Clan is a clan of people who are literal shadows. And so he's just sort of a roughly oval shaped shadow on the ground with eyes, and out of the shadow can reach either an arm or a mouth. His mouth looks sort of like a claw that just sort of pokes out on a little stalk out of the shadow. And he can, store things in his shadow body. And he becomes one of Boji's best buds. And it's hard to explain why the show is right by mugging him repeatedly. But of course he can understand Boji. That's the key thing. Is like he can easily Boji, when he speaks, he's deaf, and so he speaks with
people
this sort
will
of
figure out Kage.
Yeah.
He's just another really weird little guy
who goes around with Boji. It's so good. It has an incredibly fast pace early on. And then it slows down a little bit a lot of anime has this sort of pacing problem where it's like, we're running out of manga, dude. We got to slow down and really pay attention to every fight. But the first half of this show, it's a 2-core anime, meaning it's like 26-ish episodes or something like that. And it's almost done. It's on Crunchyroll and I think some of the other streaming services as well. And it's airing weekly. It's like we're on like episode 18 at this point, so the season hasn't actually wrapped yet. I'm not sure where the whole thing is going to wrap up, but like I can say that this is easily the best shonen anime I have ever seen. I'm not like a huge shonen anime guy. I told you I'm not that into the like Dragon Slayers or Demon Slayers of the world. Like they're okay, not really for me. But this is strictly speaking one of those. It's like it's like a fight of the week thing, but it is so different. It is so refreshing that I absolutely recommend this to literally everyone. The other show I was going to recommend from this season, I'm a little more hesitant to talk about because it's a lot hornier.
Listeners, that is Shane's head hitting his mic.
Yes. So I will talk a lot less about this one. I will preface it by saying that if you are allergic to anime horny, which I usually kind of am, I do not recommend this one for you necessarily. But I think I've sort of fallen in love with this show.
Trigger warning, anime horny.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the show you specifically said, Laura, do not watch this.
Yeah, Laura, I don't think you'd probably like this one too much. I mean, honestly, like it depends. Laura,
what is the name of the show?
Yes, sorry. The show is called My Dress Up Darling, and it is a anime romance, probably targeted primarily at men. There's not a ton of anime romances that are exclusively targeted at men. This one is probably one because it is definitely it's definitely horny. But it's horny in a way that didn't bother me. So I'm
Raygan, I have to just tell you that the reason that like when you recommend an anime on a podcast and like in Ranking of Kings, you get to talk about the cool fairy tale element. You spent way more of your like mental effort on how Kuro little black spot guy's mouth looks or whatever.
It's awesome.
And then, like you're like really you've told everyone like 10 times that this is super horny and that you don't
just
recommend
not why
it.
to watch it.
And now not why you think you want to watch it.
Okay, I know, but like I feel like so embarrassed recommending this show because I it's not my
But is it
brand
making
to
you
recommend
happy?
horny stuff. Yes, it is. It's adorable. It's so cute. So it's an anime romance about cosplay, basically, or more specifically, it's an anime romance about like not being ashamed of loving the things that you love and celebrating sort of fandoms, basically. And so it's the two main characters are this guy who's all of a sudden his name. Hang on, the names are escaping me. Let me get the names.
I mean, I literally just came from dinner with somebody who showed me that he was reading Alpha Omega fic on his phone. So, like, this is not the weirdest conversation I'm going to have today.
Awesome. So the two main characters are Gojo or Wakana Gojo and Marin. I forget her full name. Gojo is they're both high school students because of course it's an anime. Everyone's in high school. Gojo is a high school student whose whole dream is to be I forget there's a Japanese word for it, but his name is to be his dream is to be a craftsman who makes these specialized dolls. There's this sort of Japanese cultural thing where I believe it's like at like graduations or something like that. They give these very elaborate dolls that are basically these sort of very formalized dolls of old school like courtiers and like empresses and stuff. They call like bisque dolls. These are little handmade China dolls made up to look like people in old school kimonos and whatnot. I know very little about that. But Gojo knows everything about that. It's his family business. He wants to take over his grandpa's shop where they make these exquisitely detailed dolls that wear these exquisite tiny kimonos and other, fancy outfits and so on. And so he's spent basically his whole life up to this point not having friends and kind of being a little bit of an outsider who wears old-timey clothes and doesn't really do anything other than work with his grandpa making these dolls. In his class, he meets this girl, Marin, who is a gyaru, which is, if you're not super clued into anime and Japanese stuff, she's this sort of like very over the top dressing. It's a sort of a
pop culture thing.
Pop culture. It's a subculture. Yeah, it's a subculture of people who have a very particular way of dressing, and it's sometimes seen as like overly sexualized or kind of fetishized. It's a little kind of the way that. But what's interesting is like she's it becomes really obvious that like that's an extension of her like really deep love of clothes and dressing up, but not in a like but in a way that's really about expressing who she is, and she's really unreservedly into the things she's into, anime characters and game characters, and wants to do cosplay. And basically it's this romance of like, he knows nothing about the world of cosplay and only knows about making clothes. She knows nothing about making clothes, but really, really wants to do cosplay. And these two characters kind of coming together and like celebrating what they love. And it's really sweet. I will warn you, episode 2, extremely horny. The first episode is going to win you over. The first episode is really good.
Well,
the second episode
wins me over.
The first episode will win you over. The second episode will like teach you to love these characters. The characters are just adorable. They're so sweet. It's really cute. And then there's a scene, there's a whole extended scene that takes like way too freaking long, where basically the entirety of episode 2 is like Gojo freaking out because he has to measure her to take her measurements for the outfit that he's going to make for her, and it's way too horny. And then it lays off of that and becomes, I think, a lot better after that. So I'll just put that out there, that like this is one of the like most instant, like, wow, what a great character, I love her. That she's great, and it's such a sweet little romance show. If you can get over the hump of it being a little hornier than I would have appreciated. I know. I will also just say, like, I am open to anime recommendations. If you have them, like, hit me up. If you have an anime that you think I am overlooking that's really good and isn't painful in one way or another, which is my eternal struggle with anime. There's just so much bad anime. It is one of the 4 pillars of modern misery. And why do I do this to myself? But there we have it. So Shane, what's making you happy this week?
I had a couple of friends over and we watched the new Guillermo del Toro movie, Nightmare Alley.
Ooh.
And oh my God, really good movie. I really loved it.
I really want to see it. Don't spoil it for me.
Well,
we won't.
Okay. I won't spoil it for you. I'll just give kind of the setup a little bit, and
because I know nothing about it, so I'm open to hearing about it, but I just go easy on me.
Yeah, if you're very anti-spoiler, especially, you can kind of skip this segment. My wholehearted recommendation is to go watch this movie. It's still in theaters. If you want, I think you can go find it there, or you can watch it on literally 2 different streaming services. You can find it on Hulu and on HBO, I think. So, the thing to know about this is Guillermo del Toro, like, to me, my favorite stuff of his is the weird creature stuff, right? And The Shape of Water, par excellence. This is him leaning also into the romance, I think. He's getting really good at doing romance. But then also less of the weird, unspeakable creatures. But he's bringing the... what to me, it really reminds me of the production on Carnival from HBO all those years ago, right? Because it's a
that show was really good and was just like it didn't end up getting a final season that it really needed, and
kind of dropped off. I think there was a comic.
What a shame. I forgot about that.
There was a, but yeah, the setup here is it's also a carnival, same kind of. I honestly don't remember what the year is supposed to be. It's like Dust Bowl era or something like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure on timeline. Anyway,
I looked this up during the movie. I can.
Please do if you have the if you know exactly. But stylistically, it's like a noir,
year.
Right? So, and worth mentioning, I've discovered now later. So I didn't know. I just saw Del Toro's name and I was like, okay, I'll click on that. Love to watch. Had some friends over. Checked it out. We the noir stuff is perfectly done, right? There are scenes in this that are like the set and the costumes and the choices being made by the actresses, especially, all like perfectly hit the film noir early style, right? And the what the story really is it's a perfect tragedy, and you don't see that much. It's so good. I just have to say, like, the cast, incredible. We've talked a lot. Oh, thank you, Laura. So this is the late 1930s into the early 1940s, and it does have a long time period that's covered in this story. It starts off in this carnival, but it goes to some really unexpected places, and I absolutely loved the characters, the acting, the sets in particular are so good.
It's shot in Buffalo, New York, because Guillermo del Toro was like, I am tired of seeing the same cities everywhere. So he built a whole carnival But once it leaves the carnival, and it is shot in Buffalo, New York, in actual Art Deco buildings, like their town hall, and it is spectacular. You are suddenly seeing lobbies you've never seen before. There's only
Totally
a few
gorgeous.
created sets in the second half of the movie, but he shot a lot in like actual places, and it makes such a difference.
And the
Probably cheaper
lighting
too.
is gorgeous. There's scenes where the characters are just lit so perfectly for the style and the era that it just, they have apparently like done a theatrical release of the movie that you can see that's in black and white, and I can tell why they did that. I'm not usually like that in favor. They did that to
Fury Road.
That's what I was thinking of. Exactly. Yeah. They called it the black and chrome edition. And I think that was more of like a DVD extra thing. And I looked at it and I was like, no. But I would consider checking this out, because there was, it felt black and white in the way it was shot, even if it wasn't black and white. Like it was, they were doing a lot with color. But that said, you know, the color is doing a lot of work in this movie too. So I would watch the color version.
I mean, it intentionally was made to, he talked to the cinematographer and said, we are going to shoot it as if we were shooting in black and white color wise, because like that's what's going to give it the older feel on modern cameras. And then because of COVID, they were like, well, we've got a while for reshoots. Let's actually try doing the color conversion. And then he was like, oh man, this looks great. Like, we're going to release this. I'm so sad that apparently like Bradley Cooper was just hanging around New York and showed up to one of the screenings I like thought about going to, and then I don't know, probably just decided it was raining and I wasn't going to go see the black and white version and didn't go. And I feel really kind of dumb, but I will, like, I saw it twice because I saw it in theaters myself, and then I saw it with Justin. And Guillermo del Toro really is one of my favorite directors. I've been to his exhibit of his house, like all the stuff in his house. And he had a statue from Freaks, the old Carnival movie. Like he actually had a model from the movie, like full size, life size of one of the Freaks. And I'm seeing all of this DNA of like everything he's ever loved. The other thing I want to ask you, Shayna, of like,
there's a big callback to Devil's Backbone in it.
Yeah. I was also going to ask about tarot. Tarot is a huge part of the book, apparently.
It is, yeah. Well, I mean, I thought the tarot it is used really specifically when I talked about it being, the movie being a tragedy. A big part of, you know, the tragic storyline is for the person who's on the self-destructive path or destructive path has to be warned lots of times, you know, and you know, the Greeks had a chorus for it, and here there's a tarot reading that is done at the middle of the movie that is, I thought it was a great scene. That's Toni Collette in a terrific role. Very cool. I don't know. It was, I don't have that much perspective on the tarot.
No, I just wanted to say, like, if you're thinking about watching it and you are interested in tarot, there's a lot of extra like signposting and like fun flashes. Justin made us pause and like look at all the cards. So he could be like, okay, that's this card. That means this. And like he felt very excited about it. So that is an extra layer if that's the thing you're into. Apparently the original book is every chapter is named after a different tarot card.
So do you know what the Hanged Man upside down at the end of his reading, what does that mean in terms of the tarot of it? Do you know?
The book there is a specific article that I think someone wrote for the Criterion Collection of the original film about this. The Hangman upside down is like one of the more pretentious cards of like, I am not a tarot expert, so I would just be repeating what I read on the internet. But I think the idea is it's one of the most like faded cards. It's a heavily loaded card.
It is so well in the movie. It's like, that's just one of the times when you can tell that things are going wrong. And wow, what a tragic downfall.
Yeah, it is definitely the idea is that the hangman is there by his own free will because he's chill. He's got that look on his face. But it's a period of indecision and like an action, and it's kind of like that's kind of why it's like a portent. It's like a big moment, and turning it is like a writing the action. So when he's just like, oh, you can turn it upside down, it's like, oh no, you do not get what this card means.
Wow. Yeah.
Listeners, feel free to replace, but you can look up all the, resisting your fate, like all of that is tied up into this card, which is all great for the moment and thing. It's just an extra. He is the hangman in the book. On the cover of the book, I think, is the character as a hangman.
I'm definitely going to have to watch this movie a few more times because I can tell I'm going to get it's such a perfect little construction of a story, but there are all these little things that feel like they're hidden in it in different ways. So I really want to explore it more and watch it again.
Awesome. I would like to see it. So, hey, maybe, pop up here. We'll watch it on my setup. And
cool.
I would like to see it. I haven't watched it yet. So really looking forward to checking it out. Laura, what's making you happy this week? If you have anything other than the Xbox.
I do. I somehow have been doing other things besides the Xbox somehow. I will say that my stuff's all a little bit light and scattershot because honestly, I was watching a ton of Olympics. So like things that were exciting to me were like Nathan Chen like dancing to Benny and the Jets and that kind of stuff because I do like figure skating and snowboarding and watching those things. But I will suggest 2 TV shows that are quite different. One is we are in our last season of our Star Trek Deep Space Nine watch. And it is a very good show. I will say that the first season's a little rough, but there's like the worst episode of DS9 is still watchable, which is not the case with Next Generation. It's just like the consistency level of like a mediocre episode is still pretty good, especially when it really gets cooking. And they're having a lot of fun with these episodes. The holodeck stuff is just spectacular this season. They're ending it nicely. I'm sure there's going to be tons of last season shenanigans, but it's really reminding me like these characters are super strong and that they can put them in a lot of different situations. It's so much more because Deep Space Nine, that one of the differences between that and other Star Treks is it is on a space station. These people all live together. They're not going from place to place. They have to stay here. So people come by in and out. There's a lot of just people stopping by the station. It's their home. If they mess up relationship with the planet that's like right next door, that planet is always going to be next door. So they have to actually deal with politics, nearby politics. Religion plays a huge part in this. Prophecy shows up. All of these extra layers that other shows couldn't really delve into for more than an episode become very layered and very complex. Cardassians have to be a character. The Ferengis end up being like more than one Ferengi is a character. They're not like that is if you just watched one of the other shows, you'd been like, oh, Ferengis. Those are the greedy trader people who show up and make a joke episode. Having 3 fleshed out Ferengi characters, including one who gets like a romance. Just absolutely wild what they do with the show. I found it very rich and not they deal with war there is a like 7-part episode between 2 seasons. They just do all this very strange for Star Trek stuff. It feels much more like a modern sci-fi in many ways. I'll say that one of my favorite characters started out real bad season 1 and then became very, very deep indeed. So I am sad to see the show show up in the rearview mirror, but I have really enjoyed watching that one.
That's been on my list to like watch because
I think it has
I've watched
a bad pilot.
Yeah, I've watched some of it over the years, but I've never really sat down to watch like a serious stretch of Deep Space Nine. And I've watched a pretty good chunk, maybe not every episode, but the majority of Next Generation. But Deep Space Nine, everyone always says that's their favorite Trek.
And I think it's a little. I say that I don't think the pilot is super good. I think it's just because it's got pilotitis, and all of the characters are just like caricatures of themselves a bit. They also have the first season, like a bunch of characters who are from the other show just stopped by to lend some like charisma to the episode. And you're just like, get off. This is not your show. Like, get off the ship or stay if you're O'Brien and become a main character. But it's been delightful. I really have enjoyed it. And the second one is, if you're not a Star Trek fan and not willing to watch 7 seasons of sci-fi, there's a network sitcom that's great. I cannot shout this from the rafters enough. Abbott Elementary is a delight.
I think I saw a promo for that or something, but I don't know anything about it. It's about teachers, right?
Yes. So it is about elementary school teachers in Philly at a mostly Black elementary school. And it is about a group of like some teachers who've been there for a long time. There's 2 newer ones who have just passed the 2-year mark. They're the last 2 of their like generation of new teachers who are still there. It's got a lot of like real talk about like, we don't fund our schools well enough and teachers have a really hard time of it, but they make a very funny bent of it. For example, they talk about like making wish list videos that need to go viral to get school supplies, but that's the joke is then about making the video, not about like hammering in how bad it is. I've got real Superstore vibes from it, and it is like Superstore in The Office. People are comparing it to Parks and Rec, but Parks and Rec never got to be like, and politics suck and that's why we're underfunded at the same time they're making jokes. It's got this wonderful mix of earnestness and humor and a little bit of cheese because like it is elementary school students and like it's got a heart in its sleeve, but it's just as likely to make a joke about like stuff falling off the truck in Philly and that's how we got new carpets. Like it's a really delightful thing. I'm so happy it seems to be a hit. Like this show should run thousands of seasons, and it's like a show I feel like almost everybody will like.
Awesome.
Throw money at them. Keep
which
them.
Which network is this on?
It's on ABC.
Awesome. Okay, I would like to see that. So thank you very much.
And streaming on Hulu if you are a cord cutter.
Yeah, there we go. So listeners, thank you very much for joining us on this extended What's Making Us Happy episode of the Short Game. This is a bit of a weird format for us. It might be a bit of a weird edit. We'll see. So hopefully we're getting this to you in a reasonable amount of time. Next week, we're returning to our normal format, and we're talking about Dodgeball Academia. There's also, if you're a patron, there is a poll up on the Patreon right now that should still be open, I think, when you're hearing this episode. Maybe I'll bump the end date of the poll an extra couple of days just to make sure. And that's just gathering folks' suggestions about what we're covering over the next little while. So I put up a bunch of options, and you can take a look and vote on what you are most interested in seeing. But also, if you have other thoughts, that's another great way to let us know is, vote on the poll, of course, but if there's something that you want to see or hear us talk about that isn't on the poll, you can comment on there or drop us a line any of the other ways that you can contact us. And that includes our Patreon is patreon.com/theshortgame, where you can, even just $1 a month, you get immediate access to our Discord, which is where we talk about the show and plan future episodes and chit chat and make fun of each other and so on. And it's a great place to drop suggestions. We have a channel just for that. But of course, you can also drop us suggestions on Twitter @_shortgame. And we love to chat with our listeners there. Just tag us. Also, I'm on Twitter @RayganK. That's RayGanK. And Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter @Laura J. Nash.
And Shane, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at 8bitshane.
And thanks once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.